I'm really very honored to be able to share the stage or to moderate this with Janelle, who I have deep respect for. And so Janelle is a sharing lawyer based in Berkeley that specializes in helping communities learn about or work with sharing houses, cars, cooperatives, launch urban farms, and form social enterprises. She's also director of the Sustainable Economies Law Center in Oakland with Jenny Casson, and is co-author of this wonderful book, Sharing Solutions. So it's my honor to introduce Janelle Orsi, and I'm going to step back and watch the new presentation.
Okay, thank you, Marissa. So I am a lawyer. You're probably wondering, why is this lawyer drawing all these cartoons? And the reason is that every now and then I can almost just picture how we're going to change the world and how it is actually going to be awesome. And I thought, well, I just need to share that visualization with other people, because I think we all need to visualize what a better world could look like. And what it looks like is kind of a major change in plans for everybody. So we've all sort of been taught to have this plan in life. The plan is that when you grow up, first of all, you're going to make a livelihood. And this is a definition I found on a Google dictionary or something. It's kind of awful, actually, what livelihood is to us these days. It's, if you break it down, it's the work you do or the job that you have that gives you money that you then take to the store so that you can buy the things that you need. And it's kind of like this perpetual circle we're in. Go to work, get money, go to the store, buy the things we need. And the goal is we're going to make a lot of money, going to get a car, going to get a house, going to fill that house with everything we could ever need, including things like a vacuum cleaner. And the whole goal is to basically live in a vacuum. And if we could accumulate all of this stuff, then we would be fine. That's how we're going to be fine in the future. And when I was a kid, I was totally fine with this plan. I read Sunset magazine avidly. I could picture my whole life. So it seemed like a good plan. But then something has come along lately that's beginning to kind of eat away at our ability to base our whole plan for the future on that accumulation of wealth. And what we have now is this situation. And the situation is that, well, we've based our whole economic system on a system of perpetual growth, and we've used up the planet's resources faster than they can be replenished. And so that's the situation. And of course, you can see what it's doing to the Earth. I love Google Earth because it has all these features where you can click on things. There's one where you click and you can see how the Earth is feeling today. And it's not good. And then you can actually zoom in and sort of see why. And you can see what it's doing to us, the people. I mean, this is how we live. And if you zoom in even more, you can see, well, here's our neighborhoods. And even if your neighborhood doesn't look like this, this is kind of a metaphor for how we're all sort of trying to live. And basically what we're doing is we're all kind of trying to live in these little boxes. And there's even a green one, and a pink one, and a blue one, and a yellow one. and just to sort of show you what's going on here. So everyone, there's these fences kind of dividing people. These different households, they have kids, but, they might not know each other, especially kids who live behind each other don't tend to know each other. So you have, redundant swing sets. Everybody's got a grill. Everybody's got 2.3 cars per the national average. That's why that person up there is still looking for parking. And, so they're all kind of, just living in their little boxes. But then what you can't see from this picture is that every house is so full of stuff, and the garage is so full of stuff that people were kind of afraid to open the door. So then they got these sheds. You can see some of these neighbors have these sheds where they can store their extra stuff. So kind of every house is trying to live in a vacuum, and there's a vacuum living in every house. And this is sort of the state of how we live. And of course, the impact on the planet is bad. The impact on us is pretty heavy. And this whole plan that we had for the future is kind of what's causing it to begin with. So now we have this situation where we realize, well, that plan's not going to work. And we kind of just need to abandon that plan and adopt something else. And I know there are people in the audience who are kind of thinking, well, but maybe I could pull off that plan because I need those things. I need those things to survive. And I know you're thinking that because I think that at least 10 times a day there's this little voice in my head that says, Janelle, you need to make more money or you're going to die. And it's like this, our reptilian brain back there that's just responding to fear and making us feel like, there's no other solution. We just need to accumulate wealth. And But, and that's not just the voice in my head, it's sort of the voice of conventional wisdom that says, Janelle, you're a lawyer. You should walk around, act important, and tell everyone you're worth $400 an hour, and things like that. But then I realized, no, because there is a different way, and it's totally possible, and not only that, it's going to be way better and way more beautiful. And so I do think that there's this other part of my brain, the more intelligent part of my brain, that's ready to say, that was just a silly old plan. Because I think we can be creative, innovative, and audacious enough to build a whole new economy based on sharing. So here's what it looks like. First of all, back to the neighborhood. So here's one thing that they could start doing. And fruit sharing to me is kind of a metaphor for all of the ways that we kind of just need to break the ice and start providing for each other. And I used to have this plum tree. As you can see, one neighbor has a plum tree. I used to get about 500 plums per summer, and then I would try to eat them all myself, and that was not a good idea. So I started sharing them with my neighbors, and it was amazing how that breaks the ice with your neighbors, And so here are these neighbors. They're beginning to share a few things. It broke the ice. They got to know each other. Now wow, look, they took down the fence. And now they have like this huge parkland for a backyard, and they're doing more things together. Now they've got this area in the yard where they share meals, and they've gotten down to 2 grills. So getting rid of some of the redundant stuff. They got rid of a redundant swing set, and the kids play together now. And they're sharing garden space, growing food for themselves, and they're sharing chickens, and chicken sharing is funny. Everyone is always thinking about sharing chickens, and I talk about sharing all the time, and chickens always come up. And at first I was like, why chickens? And then I realized, well, chickens, in a way, they're kind of a metaphor for what we all need to do to implement more sustainable practices, things like gray water recycling and renewable energy. So all of these things it just makes sense to do them with other people. And of course, now these neighbors have gotten rid of a lot of their redundant stuff, and now they're using these sheds more creatively. Up top, you have a general stuff shed where you can keep things you don't use all the time. Your neighbors could use, like a bread maker or whatever. And then at the bottom, they have their shared tool shed for all those tools that you buy once, you maybe never used, and so now everybody has access. And they got down to 1 vacuum cleaner. So. And every household got rid of a car because they realized, well, we don't need that many cars. We don't need as many cars as we have adults. They decided to get down to 1 car per household, but now everyone in the neighborhood there, all the 4 households, are sharing a pickup truck for those times you just need a pickup truck. And they also have an electric vehicle, which you can't see, but for those around town trips. And maybe they have a local car sharing program they can use too. So that's great. And a lot of what this is, sort of the general trend of what that those neighbors are doing is, rather than trying to buy and own everything that they need, they're borrowing it, or they're co-owning it, or they're finding other ways to access it that don't require sole ownership. And in general in our society, I think we need to move from this culture of owning everything to a culture of simply finding ways to access things. And so who's going to own it is going to be nonprofits or cooperatives, or groups of people are going to own a lot of the things that we need, and we're going to have access through our membership or through our relationships. And it's not just about the things that we have, it's also about the things that we do and all of the work that we need to do. So here neighbors can really help each other out to do things that would otherwise be really burdensome. Childcare, I know a lot of people actually pay more for childcare than they do for their housing, and that's just a huge burden. And I went to one of those like gigantic preschools when I was a toddler, and thinking back on it, it feels just kind of like a factory farm for raising children, and there's no reason that we need to outsource the care of our children when we could be collaborating within our communities to provide care for each other. And same with education. I sort of feel like our public schools have just become these big factory farms for churning out people, and they're not doing a good job. So these are things that communities can come together and collaborate on, and providing for elders as well. Elders can come together and form collaborative arrangements to purchase services and to provide for each other. So, and then in some, when we share, it doesn't just ease the strain on the earth, it doesn't just ease the strain on our pocketbooks, it just makes us happier. And I realized that because I was actually sharing a vacuum cleaner with my neighbors across the street, and when I would drag that thing across the street, I wouldn't be thinking, oh wow, we're saving the planet, or wow, we're saving money. I would think, yay, I'm going to go see my neighbor and her 3-year-old, and I'll see if they're out in the garden and see what they're doing. And I just love life that way. So, and again, this neighborhood may not look like your neighborhood, but it's really just sort of a metaphor for the kinds of ways that we need to start providing for each other. So there's more. There's sort of a whole big question, too, of how do we make our livelihood, that bigger picture. And the first step in making a livelihood was, well, getting a job. And I just want to look at that quickly, because getting a job is how 92% of working adults do make their livelihoods. And I think in many ways, it's a great thing to have a job because you have sort of a predictable source of income. But the problem with having a job is, well, first of all, you kind of have to find a wheel and then become a cog in it. And that wheel might be the same wheel that's kind of running over the planet, might be running over our local communities and sort of destroying our community's abilities to provide for themselves. And so jobs are kind of a drag. And the biggest flaw about jobs is that you can't always guarantee that they're going to be there. They have this tendency to just disappear on us. And this is sort of the problem with basing our whole livelihoods on an opportunity that somebody else creates for us. So a lot of people don't have jobs right now. And then there are these voices that you hear that will tell you, it's okay, just work on your resume, practice your interview skills, and you'll get a job. As if that were going to make more jobs in the economy. So now there are people who are jobless and they feel bad about themselves because they think it's their fault. And so it breaks my heart. So I think there's got to be another way. And of course people will say, oh, there's another way. You could start a business. Oh, but then they'll be like, but starting a business is only for certain personalities. And I hear that a lot. And then I'm like, what do they mean? What are these personality traits? And I thought about it. And in this climate, it is very hard to start a business. Because in order to compete with the businesses that are out there, you kind of need to have this monster truck of a personality where you pretend you're important and you walk around and you put on a suit and you drive out the competition and you grow and you grow. And that's not sustainable. You can't sustain that without becoming just insufferable to yourself and others. So a lot of people are not wanting either of these options, and they're thinking, well, what if it's right there. I have one of those lingering coughs. Bear with me, people. So a lot of people are thinking, well, maybe we could break that reliance on that system and start to do things ourselves and provide for ourselves. So it's the grow your own movement, do it yourself. But the problem is not everyone can really have their own little house on the prairie. So it's not an option for everyone, but there's something to that whole do-it-yourself attitude, which is that maybe we can't do it ourselves individually, but our communities can do it themselves, because our communities are just full of people who have the skills and the resources to meet our whole community's needs. So these people are going to come in handy. And the question then becomes, what relationships can we create with these people? What agreements and organizations can we form with them that are going to help us provide for each other? But getting back to the whole picture of livelihood, the other step in the whole livelihood picture is that, well, we try to make money. Well, money is cool to the extent that it does help us get things we need. So there's a lawyer that needs a haircut, and that's going to be me in about a week, believe it or not. And when you have money, it's sort of the avenue that you have to connect with other people and to provide for each other. And that's great until you start to have not a lot of money. And then I thought about it, what if, all of a sudden, all the money in the world were just to evaporate, it evaporates from our wallets, and it's gone from our bank accounts, everything is zero. Are we going to just be thinking, I'm never going to get a haircut again? Or is it actually going to be our good fortune? Because we might start to realize, well, there are so many other ways to connect with each other and exchange and provide. And, I realized that if we, everybody in this room were to sort of make an agreement with each other, to say, let's try to provide as much as we can for each other without using money, it would be this cutting-edge new economic system known as community. And I think it's a wonderful thing, because look, here, I bet in this room, all of these skills probably exist. These are the things that we need to sustain ourselves in community. And there are so many ways to connect with each other. So that whole thing about money disappearing, I think, would be great. And in fact, it occurs to me, money is disappearing. So get ready. And then, of course, there's whatever form of money or form of exchange we use, we just need to use it more wisely. And the idea of taking our money to a store, which stores do we go to? Well, I don't think we should go to those anymore, because when we shop at those stores, it's kind of like putting our money onto this truck that's going to drive out of our communities and then drive over everything on its way out. Because what are these stores really doing for our communities? I mean, they're providing jobs, except for that who really aspires to work in corporate retail for their livelihood? It's just not the community that I want to live in. And then, but you also ask yourself, well, where are we going to get the things that we need? Well, I keep coming back to and then we all need to become part of the critical mass. And for things like there's a Bay Area time bank where people can go and exchange favors for each other. But there aren't enough members yet to make that a substantial way that we can really go in and meet our needs. So I think we all need to just sort of step forward and start becoming a critical mass for these new solutions. And then we need to work on our sharing skills. I have a friend who was part of a ride share. He was saving thousands of dollars per year because he had to commute about 80 miles per day. And but he quit his carpool because he was tired of people talking so much. And our sharing skills are about learning our limits, learning how to communicate them in ways that aren't going to freak people out or make them defensive, and listening, empathy, flexibility, cooperation. These are not just these are actually skills that we all need to practice, because they are things we're all capable of. They don't always come naturally, because there is still that reptilian brain in us that's sort of always thinking fight, flight, but these are things I think it's like a muscle we need to exercise and practice every day. And then, this is my favorite subject because I'm a lawyer, designing the laws and policies and the legal structures for a more sharing world. And part of it is figuring out how to make agreements with each other and form organizations. This is a lot of what I do as a sharing lawyer, is I help people figure out how are you going to structure your sharing arrangement. And then I did write that book. I brought a couple of them, so if anybody wants to come up afterwards and tell me that you want to create a sharing world, I'll give you a copy. But I only have a couple. But anyways, simply making these agreements and organizations isn't enough, as it turns out. It kind of caught me off guard, even after I decided to become a sharing lawyer, that it turns out a lot of ways we share are illegal. And I'll show you how I can catch you off guard. Like, let's say you want to have some friends over for soup, and you ask them to bring a side dish. This is perfectly acceptable behavior. This is fine. But what if you ask people, instead of to bring a side dish, to bring $4? Well, are you now operating a soup business? And because you're operating a soup business, does that mean you have to jump through all of the legal hoops that regular food businesses need to jump through? And these are the kinds of legal hoops that you really can't get through unless you're really to scale and have a lot of money. So it doesn't necessarily fit, because you're not starting one of these gigantic soup restaurants, and you're not even really starting a small business or even a micro enterprise. At most, you could call it a nano enterprise if you even meant it to be like a business. But the thing is, these are just the ways that people want to share, and they want it to be. There's some reciprocity involved, and sometimes there's money, sometimes they're not. It's really just sort of about providing for each other. And what I've started to notice is that so much of the ways that we need to provide for each other in a more sharing economy sort of straddle this gray area between things we do in our personal realms, like cooking, things we do in commercial realms, like have restaurants, and then there's this gray area in between, which is these community stew nights for money or barter. Like, what is that? Is it a business, or is it just people cooking for each other? Another example is having a car. Lots of people have cars. It's different than running a rental car company, but what if you do form a neighborhood car sharing club? Are you now a rental car company subject to all the laws that rental car companies are subject to? And then, it comes up again around people cooperating to produce food. So the USDA says that it's illegal to even give away milk or to deliver milk that hasn't been certified. And a lot of people feel like, well, I want to produce my own milk. We as a community should produce milk locally. So they get cows or they get goats. And they think, well, it doesn't make sense for everyone to have their own cow. So we'll share. We'll all collaboratively share a cow. But the USDA says, no, you can't even give milk away or deliver. And they literally come out dressed like this to enforce on these milk producers. So, but it's an interesting thing, because these are laws that are created to protect people, of course, but they don't apply well when people are just truly collaboratively doing things on a small scale. So there's that. And then we also all need to start learning a lot about zoning. And zoning's really useful to the extent that it's told us what uses are compatible with each other. And when when industries and agriculture started to get really, really big and disgusting and smelly and dusty and polluting, our zoning laws really helped us because they said, okay, stinky stuff goes over there and we're going to live over here. And we created this clear separation, residential, commercial, industrial, but it went too far. And especially because now we really want to just relocalize production and relocalize exchange and bring it back to our neighborhoods. Now we have these crazy situations where this woman in Michigan was charged with a misdemeanor for growing vegetables in her front yard. And she wasn't even selling them, but the people, there are people who just grow food in their backyards, which is fine, it's different than running a whole farm. But now there are a lot of people who are thinking, well, I want to sell the veggies. It makes sense to sell some of the vegetables that you're growing. So another zoning barrier that that comes up is sort of between having a home and having a hotel. What a lot of people are doing now is charging money for short-term guests. Airbnb.com allows people to find folks to stay in their homes. And in New York City, this is huge. It's almost making it affordable to live in New York City by having guests, and affordable to stay in New York City and not patronize the huge hotel chains. But it's illegal because our zoning laws say that you can't have a hotel in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And our zoning laws don't quite know how to tell the difference. And they also don't know how to tell the difference between, building a house, building a massive subdivision of McMansions, and then a group of people who wants to just build a very low impact eco-village, maybe put 6 yurts on a piece of land. And so these are some of the barriers that are coming up around zoning. Now, securities law. Now we also have to learn about securities law, which sounds boring, but it's going to be so relevant anytime you want someone to contribute resources to something you want to do that requires a little extra money. And so, and we have these securities laws basically to prevent vulnerable people from losing their money in investment schemes. But again, it's a law that's really gone too far. Like if you want to make a donation, that's fine. That's not a security. And it is very different from investing a lot of money in a huge company. But what about this kind of gray area between donating and investing, where you're investing because you really just want this local business to get off the ground? You put in $100, you don't care when you get it back, you hope you get it back, but whatever. That's illegal. Even that's illegal if you say you don't care if you get it back. And buying cat food, normal behavior, right? Different than buying stock in the whole cat food company. But what if you and a bunch of other people want to form a cat food co-op and you're all putting in some money up front, you're going to get a space, and you're all going to make cat food together? Are you investing in a cat food company, or are you buying cat food? Or is it some sort of gray area in between? And the ironic thing is that people who have a lot of money are considered accredited investors, and they really do have the freedom to invest almost anywhere they want because they're not considered to be as vulnerable. But that's only about 1% of the population. So it's ironic that the other 99% of us really only have one way to invest our money easily, which is in Wall Street, whereas the 1% can invest wherever they want. So anyways, so securities laws are kind of a thorn in our sides. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we're trying to change them. Employment laws. We also need to learn about these because, well, here's this guy. If you recognize him, it's because he's Bon Jovi. But anyways, he started this restaurant in New Jersey, which is it's a sweet model. It's like a community cafe where people all eat together, and if you don't have the money to pay, then you can go and work in the cafe and get credits that you can then spend on food. And that's totally illegal. Don't tell him, he hasn't figured that out yet. And he's so happy right now. But the thing is, you can't volunteer for a for-profit business because we have these employment laws to protect workers from being exploited in those same situations. And you also can't pay people in food credits, which is what he's trying to do because the law says minimum wage needs to be paid in dollars. So, and it also affects family farmers. I work with a lot of farmers in the Central Valley, Hmong and Lao refugee farmers, who they all have these small farms adjacent to each other. They go help each other out all the time. But if they're helping each other out and the Department of Labor shows up, which they do, they say, well, who's working here? Do you have workers' comp from them? No? Okay, thousands of dollars of fines for basically collaborating. Grocery co-ops, it's illegal to have a grocery co-op store and volunteer in it. And I used to do this all the time. I loved it. It was the fun thing that I did once a month, is go work for 2 or 3 hours in my grocery co-op. And the thing is, again, it's like our labor laws can't tell the difference between this kind of activity and exploited grocery store workers. So, and it's that gray area again between, are you grocery shopping? Are you a grocery store? Are you a bunch of people who have gotten together to buy groceries together? So, and the thing about all of this is that what I've realized and those, by the way, are just sort of the tip of the iceberg of some of the legal barriers that come up and make me pull my hair out. But at the same time that it makes me pull my hair out, I'm so happy because I realize that most of our laws are about regulating relationships that are exploitative or where people are vulnerable. And most of the sharing economy is about creating relationships that are collaborative and egalitarian and cooperative and sharing. And you might even have an employer who is the employee because it's a worker co-op, or a consumer that is a producer because it's a producer co-op. And so I love that it doesn't fit into any legal boxes, because that tells us we're finally doing something new. And but there's still all of these legal barriers, and the Sustainable Economies Law Center is sort of looking at these hoops and saying we just really need to bring these hoops back down to earth and put them to better use in our communities. And so one thing we worked on is the California Homemade Food Act, which got proposed a couple weeks ago. It's going to allow people to sell certain foods they produce at home. And another one is the crowdfunding bill. Jenny Casson, who spoke earlier, has worked a lot on that. And it's going to allow people to make small investments in local businesses. And we also have a lot of work to do to kind of change the whole legal profession, because the majority of transactional lawyers are still doing this. They're greasing the wheels of large destructive businesses. And I think these are the wheels that we need to be greasing. These are the things that lawyers need to be working on in our local economies. But we have this problem, which is that still throughout the country, there's just no one there to meet the legal needs of these new economies. And so our organization, the Sustainable Economies Law Center, is really trying to get these legal resources out there so communities can get their needs met. And I guess I just want to say, if there are any philanthropists in the audience, our organization is a really great cause, if we do say so ourselves. And even if you're not a philanthropist and you're thinking, I want to live in a sharing world, that's the world I want to live in, I'm going to support an organization that's doing it, the Sustainable Economies Law Center. We're working very hard on all these things. And because these are the wheels that we want to grease, this is the new economy, it's going to be more fun, there's a place for everyone, and bringing about the sharing revolution. So that's it. Thank you.
Let's let her have a moment to catch her breath. I said, you have 30.
If a lot of this stuff is illegal, if it's technically illegal for Airbnb to be running that way, and if there's issues with these car sharing, I'm just wondering at what point are they going to be prosecuted for that stuff? What should we really worry about, and what shouldn't we worry about? Because this is just such an amazing movement that's happening.
That's a good question. Airbnb and all these websites that are helping people share aren't necessarily breaking the law. It's the people who are using them. And that's why it's really hard to crack down on them. And so Airbnb is just doing great in spite of the fact that they're helping people do something illegal. And really it does vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. In what way is it illegal and who enforces on it? But the other thing is, I mentioned there is this gray area between what is commercial and what's not, is that when people get together and provide for each other on a much more casual basis, it doesn't necessarily fall into a realm of regulation. And so most of what I do as a lawyer is help advise people on how to structure the relationships that are going to fall outside of something that looks like a commercial activity. But the Airbnb model, there are people who are doing it to earn money, and so, yeah. A small exemption where there's not going to be a lot of risk. And the example with zoning, allowing people to sell small amounts of vegetables they grow in their backyard, or allowing people to do a small amount of having people over, the Airbnb model, like maybe allow people to do 30 nights a year of guests or something like that. So, and then as far as pushback, I've heard that there's going to be pushback, and maybe especially when we make these laws on the state level, like the cottage food law, we hear that the retail industry is going to come and say, no, this is unfair competition, but we haven't seen it yet. The hotel industry in New York has really rebelled against Airbnb. But the nice thing about most of the sharing that's going to happen, though, is going to happen very quietly, among people with casual relationships in our communities, and it's going to happen so quietly that corporations aren't going to notice how much it's happening. And it's not happening in a one centralized, organized way. So it's, I don't know, I'm hoping that no one's going to notice that we're just taking over the world of sharing. Making themselves simply accessible and affordable to the people.
So right over here. I was just going to say, this is exciting and important, and also looking at if it's in your community, what resources do you have within that specific community to share these?
Just every community needs to be thinking of sharing as a way that we're going to come together and meet our needs.
We are supposed to stop, but we do another 5 minutes.
I can give you 2.
All right, so how about 2 more questions, one here, one there.
My question pertains more to sort of the collaboration opportunity that we've witnessed a few models of this happening, where there's been
Those third and fourth levels that I talked about of building sharing organizations and building sharing into the infrastructure of our communities, that is going to require a lot of collaboration by a lot of different parties, nonprofits, government, businesses, and so yeah, I think that's going to play a huge role in it.
Raise your hand again, because all the transition movement is also a lot about this, so there's 2 really good people here to connect with. Thank you so much.